Welcome, everybody, to the Rise and Fall Fantasy Football Show, Week 4 edition. I'm your host, Dave Sarner. I'm going to be talking to you about every single matchup and every single fantasy asset that you need to know about for your Week 4 matchups here this week. And this week is a special week for me. I am riding solo for the first time today. No co-host today. It will be a solo show where we are going to go over every Week 4 matchup. We added a couple more statistics to the game-by-game analysis this week. We wanted to make sure that we got your quarterback rankings, your running back rankings, your tight end rankings, and your wide receiver rankings. Allow you to really see and get a holistic picture of what each team is doing. And from there, we're going to go through the analysis and get you your picks for this week's matchups. In the final episode of the Rise and Fall Fantasy Football Show this week, we have 4 really solid matchups for you today. The Patriots go to the Chiefs to face the Super Bowl champs. The Bills visit Las Vegas to go into the Death Star and face the Raiders. The Eagles head over to San Francisco on the West Coast and try to get their first win of the season. And the Falcons go up against the Packers in what should be a high-powered Monday night performance that could potentially get moved based on COVID-19 situation going on right now. However, there are a bunch of news and notes that we need to talk about. For the Raiders, Henry Ruggs is not expected to play this week. Bryan Edwards is officially out, as well as first-round draft pick Damon Arnette is sidelined 6 to 8 weeks. This could really up the value of the passing game. In the episode, we talk about this. Stephon Diggs and John Brown could be really interesting options, especially with Arnette out of the lineup. Now, on the other side, of course, with Edwards out and Ruggs out, you need to find someone who's going to be able to get the ball in the receiving game, as the Bills are kind of weak there a little bit sometimes. Hunter Renfrow is the guy to throw into your lineup. He, in my opinion, is a must start in your flex position, wide receiver 3. I think he's going to have a really good game this week. Now, in the San Francisco Sunday night game, Jordan Reed out 6 to 8 weeks with a knee injury. Kind of just another day in the park for Jordan Reed, it feels like. At least it wasn't a concussion. That one would have really concerned me more than even the knee. The guy's had like 9 concussions so far in his career. I just want him to not really get some really bad damage long term. On top of that, for the Eagles side of things now, Dallas Goedert was placed on IR. He could return in a couple of weeks. They did sign Hakeem Butler, the former Arizona Cardinal, and they are converting him to tight end. Interesting move. Could be someone to replace Dallas Goedert. He's a big guy. He's failed as a receiver, so maybe they can find something with him here at the tight end position for the Eagles. And the Falcons in the Monday night game are not going to be with Darqueze Dennard, one of their starting corners. He is officially on IR for multiple weeks and will not be available. The Packers should be good to go. Lazard, Adams, if he's good, put him in your lineups. They should go well for you. Maybe even a Robert Tonyan. That is all the news, notes, and updates that we have for you in the final episode of this week. Now, here is episode 4. Next game could be one of the best games of the week, and I think any game with the Chiefs at this point could be a really good game as long as the opponent is kind of a higher tier opponent. Well, the Patriots you consider one of those higher tier opponents. Despite not really producing from a passing perspective outside of week 2, the Patriots have really looked good in the rushing game. This week, Cam didn't even have to do it with his legs. He was able to get some things done. Sony Michel had a big game. Obviously, the Rex Burkhead thing. Listen, I'm going to be very clear. I'm not touching the running backs. I don't like the situation in New England. If you have Rex Burkhead, you could take a shot. But I can tell you right now, if we find out James White's going to go, he'll get a touchdown with everything going on with him. I would start James White. He's the only one. And then this could also be the Sony Michel show. You know, we say, oh yeah, Rex Burkhead had a great day. He only had 6 receptions. Now he had 10 targets. And that's the big thing, the receiving game. So I think if James White's back, Rex Burkhead's value goes down the shitter. But he could be that receiving back for right now. And Julian Edelman, N'Keal Harry, they're going to have to make something happen. I think Cam is a better overall passer in his career than Lamar is from that style of a quarterback. So I do like Julian Edelman a little bit. I think he does make some things happen and tries to elevate his game. I'm not going to go out of my way to start him by any means, but I do kind of like Julian Edelman this week. I don't even know what to tell you about. Rex Burkhead, good luck. All right. Cam, I do like this week, but it could be a little bit of a stingier matchup. And I don't like the defense this week against Kansas City. Now, with that all being said here, look, the Chiefs are getting up to 16th most points to quarterbacks, 18th most to running backs, 32nd to wide receivers. So again, we're not big on the wide receivers here. I'm probably phasing out all of them. Julian Edelman, this probably will convince me to keep him on my bench and not really move forward with him this week. Tight end, I don't even know who the hell the tight end for the Patriots is. I don't think they use one. And running back. So 18th against the run, 16th against quarterback. I like Cam. That's the only one I'm comfortable with from the Patriots side of things. From the Chiefs side of things, QB 21, the 21st most points, 21st most for running backs, 26th most for tight ends. So Patriots very stingy against the quarterback, the running back, and the tight end. They're really, really lax against the wide receiver position. Obviously, you're going to start Kelsey. Tyreek Hill, this is a great matchup for him. Mecole Hardman could be an interesting matchup for him. But again, it could be Mecole Hardman, or it could be Sammy Watkins, or it could be Demarcus Robinson this week. I do like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, though, in this game to get, if they're going to continue to give him the ball from a reception standpoint. I think he has a monster game this week. I really like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, even though 21st against the run, I think the passing for him is going to be where he gets a lot of success this week. And seeing that last week makes me a little more confident with that. So you're going to start Patrick Mahomes, obviously, Tyreek Hill. You're obviously going to go with Kelsey, but be mindful, a tough defense for Kelsey. This could be a little bit of a down week for him. That being said, it is Patrick Mahomes, and we saw them shred the Baltimore Ravens defense. So I'm not really quite worried about who they're going up against. You're going to start your Kansas City Chiefs, and you're going to feel good about it. On the Patriots side, guys, I'm literally going with Cam Newton, and if James White is going, he would be the guy I would start. I would be putting my lineup to get at least a touchdown or two. Okay? He would have that Rex Burkhead week, in my opinion, if you will. Next matchup is the Buffalo Bills against the Las Vegas Raiders, the second team to play in Las Vegas, in the Death Star, if you will. What an amazing stadium that is. I have to say that for the second straight week here. But not as amazing at how Josh Allen's playing, right? Josh Allen is dominating. If you have Russell Wilson in your MVP conversation, you have to have Josh Allen practically sitting on the bench next to him. He is playing so well right now and is elevating his team to victories every week. I really, really like this football team this week. And this week could be really interesting against the Las Vegas Raiders. Now, we look at them, 31 points last week, 311 yards, 4 TDs, and a rushing touchdown on top of that. So 5 touchdowns total for Allen. Singletary, 71 rushing yards on 13 attempts. He did have the 5 for 4 for 50 that saved his fantasy week. John Brown, 6 for... He didn't do anything last week. I expect a bounce back week for him, though. Stephon Diggs, a little down this week, 6 for 4, 49 yards and a touch, 12.9 fantasy points. Cole Beasley actually out-targeted him, out-caught him, out-produced him, and got more fantasy points overall. However, I still expect it to be the Stephon Diggs show and the John Brown show. I think the 13 points for Cole Beasley, the 10 points for Gabriel Davis, I think it has more to do with John Brown taking targets away from him. So I'd be more concerned about John Brown than I am Stephon Diggs. You're going to lock in Stephon Diggs. He's a top 15, top 12 fantasy option right now. Tyler Kroft, interesting game. Not going to put him on my team. I'm not going to start him this week, even though the Raiders, especially because the Raiders are really stingy against that tight end position. Now, as we mentioned, everyone else here, there is some things you have to be alarmed about. And for me, I like Devin Singletary this week. And I was a little down on him and Zach Moss to a degree the last couple of weeks. This week, guys, I really like them. Raiders are giving up the most points to running backs this season. Devin Singletary could have a really good game. If Zach Moss doesn't go, and I haven't checked the updates on that, so I don't know if there was one. If he doesn't go, Devin Singletary, you lock him up. If he does go, I think you could still start Devin Singletary in your flex. He's a great flex option there. If Moss doesn't go, he's an RB2. Easily, you throw him in. But just be mindful that, hey, this team is going to pass the ball more than they're going to run. Now, it's an interesting matchup because you have the Raiders, who are really bad against the run, but really good against everything else. Like 28th against QBs, 29th against receivers, 29th against tight ends. But I expect Josh Allen to utilize some of this running back. He's an must start. Have a little caution about this Devin Singletary, as we mentioned. John Brown, Stephon Diggs. I want to say it could be a bounce back week for them, but it could be another tough week. I think John Brown has more than 0 points, but I'm not as excited about these guys this week as I was before. Stephon Diggs is going to be higher on my list, but I'm going to be mindful that this is a really tough matchup. On the other side of things, I really like Hunter Renfrow this week, guys. Henry Ruggs might not be there available. Bryan Edwards is officially ruled out for this game. So either way, I really like Hunter Renfrow to be this kind of guy to break out. Again, 9th in points against for the Buffalo Bills. Listen, they played some really high-powered offenses, so they might turn it up. This could be skewed stats also. We're not 100% sure yet. It could happen, but we'll see. 9th overall in wide receiver points, 10th for tight ends. Listen, I'm not going to go out of my way here and start Dawson Knox against a really stingy tight end. But hell, Darren Waller might be the tight end of the week if he's healthy and ready to go. 10th against tight ends. Josh Jacobs, a little less of a matchup. I don't expect a huge game, but you're going to start him if you have him. I think he'll still put up decent points. Listen, the Rams were able to score. Look what Darrell Henderson did to them last week. So Josh Jacobs has a really good matchup despite this rank. Don't shy away from someone like that, like Josh Jacobs, because of the matchups. Look what they did last week. Darrell Henderson, 20 touches, 118 yards, and a touchdown or something like that. So feel good about Josh Jacobs throwing him in. I really like Hunter Renfrow this week as a flex wide receiver 3 potential. Darren Waller, you're obviously going to throw right into your lineup. This could be a shootout, so you're going to be passing the ball a lot. Hopefully, Josh Jacobs will see more receptions from that end. And with that being said, I don't hate Derek Carr, 9th against quarterbacks. I mean, I'll throw him in a DFS lineup. I'm not going to go out of my way to start him this week. I'd rather rely on the receivers in Hunter Renfrow and Darren Waller at tight end here. Josh Jacobs, you're still going to start besides a bad matchup. But on the other side, good matchup, Devin Singletary. Josh Allen could have a good amount of rushing yards this week. Maybe a little down week for Stephon Diggs and John Brown. I mean, they didn't have a great week last week. It could be a similar week like that this week. However, I do expect one of them to get in the end zone, and I do expect John Brown to have more than 0 fantasy points. And then I am personally not going to start the defenses. I have had Buffalo this whole time. They have really shit the bed, and they're just not great right now. That could change, but right now I'm focused on just, moving forward with the offensive options. I'll stream whatever defense I need to at this point. Now we are finally there. We got into the night games, the Sunday night matchup, the Philadelphia Eagles against the San Francisco 49ers. Now, guys, I get it. The Eagles, they just don't look like themselves this week. I don't expect that to stop anytime soon, especially against this matchup. They are actually getting a San Francisco 49ers team almost at full health offensively. Looks like Deebo Samuel is still going to miss this week's game, likely back week 5. So keep that on your radar. When he's back, you want him in your lineup. He's going to provide you with some running potential and receiving potential, and he came on super strong at the end of last year. Now, on top of that, we don't know what's going on with the running backs here in San Fran. Jerick McKinnon, if he's starting, you're starting him. And I'll show you the matchups. It's not the best matchup, but you're going to start these running backs for the San Francisco team as you can. Most likely, it seems to be that there's 2 producers every single week. If Jerick McKinnon is a starter, he's the one you want to start. If Raheem Mostert's a starter, you can start Raheem Mostert as you usually would. And then you should also, if you have Jerick McKinnon, still start him in potentially a flex unless you have a much, much more solid option to roll with, right? I think that Jeff Wilson can still vulture something here, even Raheem Mostert back. So keep that in mind. It could be, one of those triple-edged swords in a really bad way where it's just the volume's all over the place and one guy could do this and even on smaller touches and so forth. So just be careful about that. The Eagles' run defense is pretty good at the end of the day, so you don't want to get caught with a guy, the third running back of the San Francisco team, right? So be mindful. Watch out for Raheem Mostert. See how that value is. If Mostert's going, you start him. McKinnon, you could start him as a flex then. If not, McKinnon's the starter. Jeff Wilson, easy flex for you. I think he can absolutely put up some good points, but I expect McKinnon to be the guy to get 20-plus points if he's the starter. Like we said, Deebo is going to be out, so Brandon Ayuk, fire him up. Even though that the rapport was with Nick Mullins last week, I do expect Jimmy to get him more involved. He's healthy now, so I do think that he's going to step up a little bit more maybe this week. He did have 8 for 5 for 70, good target share. He led the team in targets overall at any position. Brandon Ayuk could be a deep sleeper in this league. The secondary for the Eagles, though, pretty darn good. And so the reason I say all that is because when you look at this, Eagles defense, like I said, we look at these running backs. Eagles are pretty good against the running backs, right? So that's why I say that. Don't get caught with like the flex or whatever. If you have a better volume option who's going to get you things. Now, let's say you have like Jeff Wilson and David Montgomery, who I'm not high on. I'm going to tell you to go with David Montgomery over Jeff Wilson, because even though Jeff Wilson has an explosive boomer bust potential, Montgomery will get the volume. Even in a bad matchup, I would go that route. So just to give you an idea here, that's kind of what I'm talking about. If it's Jerick McKinnon starting, I would start Jerick McKinnon over David Montgomery. I would even start, obviously, Raheem Mostert over David Montgomery as well, if that was the case. Jimmy, I'm not starting this week. Even though that they're not bad or not great, not awesome against quarterbacks. They give up the 17th most points, Philadelphia. I don't trust Jimmy coming back from the injury. They do get Kittle, so you're going to start Kittle in at tight end. Eagles are letting up the 11th most points against tight ends this week. So obviously you want to get him in your lineup. And then I'm really phasing out the receivers, even though that they are 12th, the 49ers. I think, here's the thing. If they watch the film, they'll put Deshaun Jackson on the left side and let him try to burn one past Emmanuel Mosley. Maybe that can work. I just don't trust those receivers. Although someone needs to step up in this game, because Dallas Goedert is out for this game. He did get injured last week, which is the reason for his down performance. Zach Ertz, even though the matchup is a nightmare against San Francisco at 31st points against. So basically, second fewest points the Niners are letting up against tight ends. I think you still start him this week. Kittle could absolutely skew those stats a little bit for them. Or I'm sorry, Ertz can skew those stats for them. I don't think they've really gone up against crazy good tight ends overall. Yeah, the Jets, the Giants, and Evan Ingram just doesn't look like himself. And then Arizona, they don't really have a tight end. So that 31st tight end stat for the Niners, super deceiving. These are the three tight ends. You have Chris Herndon he went up against, Evan Ingram, who's having a really, really bad year, and Dan Arnold or Max Williams, whoever the hell was the starter for week 1 against Arizona. They don't even use their tight ends. So Zach Ertz, fire him up. He's going to be a high-end TE1. I actually have him extremely high. He's going to get a ton of volume. He should be one of the biggest targets with Rager and Dallas Goedert out. Sanders also a rank up. Obviously, even though it's the 32nd ranked defense against running backs in the 49ers, you kind of have to. I think Sanders has to be in your lineups. He's the only other guy that I can see producing outside of Zach Ertz for the Eagles. That all being said, you start San Francisco's defense. Be mindful, they are not the same defense, and they did come off playing the Jets and the Giants. The team they lost to was a really good Arizona Cardinals offense. However, the Eagles aren't quite there. I would put them more in the tier of the Giants at this point. So I could expect a pretty good game from the defense. I love Ertz this week. I really do. I think volume-wise, he's going to get the points. Miles Sanders, I don't love. Matchup obviously downgrades him a little bit here, although he's getting 8 targets in the passing game. So that I do like. And I expect that to, potentially even be more involved this week as well. Brandon Ayuk is a good sleeper I like. You're starting Kittle if he's there. Raheem Mostert, you start if he's available, if he's playing. Jerick McKinnon if he's not. Jeff Wilson, you can throw in a flex. Be mindful, though, that it's a very boomer bust kind of guy. He'll get 20 points for you this week, and he'll get 3 for you next week. Jimmy Garoppolo, not necessarily loving the matchup, 17th overall, but it's a better matchup for than Carson Wentz. So if you want to go for it, I would have felt like Jimmy would have been maybe a better option with Debo back. So I would personally maybe phase him out on my end. But that's kind of just my personal feelings of the matter. And then finally, the Monday night game, the Atlanta Falcons against the Green Bay Packers, and they saved the big score fest for last, in my opinion. This could be a monster game. Now, what I don't like is both Devontae Adams and Julio Jones were banged up this week. And if you have them, then you have to worry about, the Monday night if they're going to go or not. So hopefully we get good news from them before Sunday's games. Hopefully Saturday or even, today, Thursday or Friday. If that doesn't happen, listen, just be mindful, have a backup plan. But if they go, this is going to be a really fun performance here. Russell Gage, we'll see what's happening with him for Atlanta during the week. We don't know if he's going to be back this week. It could be the Calvin Ridley and Julio show. If that's the case, if Russell Gage doesn't go, expect maybe Hayden Hurst to step it up. Or Zacchaeus could come in, and he had 6 targets from that perspective. But I think Green Bay will play that a little better. And, we'll see what happens. Now, granted, Packers are stingy against the tight ends. We look here. the Packers, 24th against tight ends, is one of their best positional values. But they are third against running backs, so you're going to start Todd Gurley this week. I do like that matchup for him. I also like the wide receiver position at 15. So obviously you're going to start Calvin Ridley. You're going to start Julio. Get them in your lineup. And then obviously Matt Ryan could be a little down week this week. I actually don't know if I love Matt Ryan. Obviously you're going to start Rodgers. But I think Matt Ryan has a potential faller potential here. He might, what I didn't like what I saw from him last week was he was super highly productive the first half. And then things started to fall apart in the second half, and he could not get anything going. And I feel like I've kind of seen that for 2 weeks now, and that's why they've seen these comeback victories, Part of that you have to blame, you have to blame the defense. But part of that you can also blame on Matt Ryan. And so at the end of the day, not surprising, 238, 50% passing, 1 touchdown, 1 pick. Now, granted, the Bears defense is a little bit better than the Packers defense overall. But again, it's going to be, I think you have to get the run game going in Atlanta this week. Todd Gurley and Brian Hill both coming off big weeks. I think you pound the rock with them a little bit. I think that value could go down, but this could turn into a big shootout. So if that is the case, don't worry about that. I think Todd Gurley gets his points. I also think Calvin Ridley gets his points. If he stays healthy, I guarantee you Ridley's going to have a big game again. He had 13 targets. He's a wide receiver 1. He's elite status at this point. He is a monster right now. Even with getting less than half his targets caught, 5 catches, 110 yards, 14.2 fantasy points in a half-point PPR. We love that. On the other side of things, Aaron Rodgers, you're starting. Great matchup for him. Falcons are the number 1 points. And let's face it, Aaron Rodgers is my number 1 quarterback of the week. I'm pretty sure he's going to be the number 1 quarterback for most people this week. It's pretty obvious how good of a matchup this truly is for him. That all being said, I don't know, how this defense, they played a little better to a degree last week. They get off to a hot start, so I don't know. But one thing's for sure here from me, Aaron Rodgers, you're going to throw into your lineup first against points. First for most points allowed for quarterbacks by the Falcons. Third most points allowed for wide receivers. Second most points for tight ends. And we'll talk about that in a second. And 17th for running back. Now, obviously, Aaron Jones, you're going to start. Putting him in your lineup. 17th is not bad, not great either, right? So you start him in your lineup here. It's middle of the tier, so it's still a pretty solid game. I would expect maybe more of like a what he did this week rather than what he did in week 2. Okay, that's kind of how I look at this. Now, the same side of things, every other position you're gonna put your guys in. Devontae Adams needs to be starting in your lineups here. Number 3 against wide receivers. Allen Lazard, I think we finally found out he's the number 2. If I had to see anything or guess anything from what I'm watching, he's the number 2 there. MVS could even have a pretty interesting game. But guys, my biggest sleeper in this game, Robert Tonyan. Now, I actually joked with Matt last week about Robert Tonyan and about how, he's not exactly, your fantasy producer. Packers don't use tight ends. And we joked, well, maybe someone else can get involved. And Matt was jokingly says, well, maybe Robert Tonyan. And I'm like, that would be funny. Not so funny when he actually goes 5 for 5 for 50 yards and a touch. He's been producing the last couple of weeks. He actually has over 4 or 5. He's had over like 30 to 40 yards. He's been the top producer at tight end for them almost every week so far. So I actually think Robert Tonyan, guys, that's not just a smokescreen. He is my deep sleeper to again have a pretty big game and get double-digit fantasy points for the Green Bay Packers against the Falcons this week. I love Tonyan. I'm going to throw him probably in my showdown lineup on Monday night when I do this game because I don't like doing night games as full-on classic lineups in DFS. I like doing the game-per-game showdown for those just because it's one game, so you're picking between 2 teams. That all being said, I like Tonyan second against tight ends, giving up the most points against them. Last week, we saw, the Bears, Jimmy Graham went off, and he doesn't go off very often. I really like Robert Tonyan. If you don't think that the Packers are going to try to expose that this week, then you're silly. You're crazy. I think everyone's kind of just ignoring that Tonyan actually had a pretty good game, but I think he could produce. This team doesn't have all these receivers, amazing receivers, that it's going to phase out the tight end. They have Adams. They have now Lazard, who we're just finding out like last week is a legit guy, but he's been there. Same with MVS. I'm not sitting here saying, well, Allen Lazard and MVS are just studs. No, they're not. Not yet. So I think Robert Tonyan can absolutely get some shares here. I think he's a very deep sleeper. If I'm choosing a tight end in this matchup, we are phasing out Hayden Hurst, and we are going in our DFS lineup or super deep sleeper, super deep sleeper in your league matchups. Robert Tonyan. Guys, do a DFS lineup, test him out, and see how it goes. I'm not saying go out and put him in, but if he does produce, I'm going to, tip my own horn a little bit here and, and drink a beer in celebration. So, with that all being said, let's go into the matchups. Atlanta Falcons, Matt Ryan, again, could have a rough matchup here. Wide receiver could be a little rough here, but I think they're going to be all right. I think Calvin Ridley has a good game. Julio gets involved. I think this actually could be one of those games where Calvin might have a little down game and Julio steps up if he's healthy and ready to go. Unless we find out that he's still just really nagged or banged up and stuff and he has this nagging injury and he's going to play with it. Then it's Calvin Ridley show. You're obviously going to start Todd Gurley this week. I think he's a really good start this week. Won't get you the receptions, but earlier on, he's going to get some volume. And then I'm phasing out Hayden Hurst. On the other side, you're starting Rodgers. You're starting your receivers, Allen Lazard, Devontae Adams. MVS could be an interesting DFS play, in my opinion. But I do like Robert Tonyan as my deep sleeper for DFS. Could be a deep sleeper for leagues. I'm not going to just, tell you to put him in your lineups this week, but I really like him this week. And of course, Aaron Rodgers, the number one quarterback ranked on the week for the Monday night matchup. I think he goes off and has a monster game yet again.
Send the rocks across the